Hey y'all, it's Ashley Bookishrealm and I'm back with another video. As you can tell by the title of this video, I'm here to do my December wrap up. So these were the final books that I read in 2021. December was an off month for me. I think I've probably said that enough. Everybody's like, Ashley, we get it. You didn't have a good December. So I did not read as much as I usually read, but that's okay. I did close out the year with some pretty interesting reads. Some of them good reads, some of them complete misses. I actually ended up doing a lot of rereading in the month of December, I think, because it was just easier for me to process stuff that I had already read. But anyway, if you're new to this channel and you like what you're seeing, make sure you hit the like button, hit the subscribe button if you want to see more content, and hit that bell for notifications so you never miss a video. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and jump into everything that I read. I am going to do this in a way that I think I've always done it, which is I essentially, what do? I cover all the books first, and then at the end I'll cover my comics, graphic novels, and picture books. So kind of keeping those two things separate. So one of the unique things about December of this month is that I do not own any of these books physically. So clearly all I did this month was borrow from the library. Really. Everything that I read, I either borrowed from the library or I think I listened to on Audible or Libro FM. So I did Libby, Libro FM, Audible, and Hoopla. That was it. That's how I consume this stuff this month. It's crazy. I own none of these. Okay, so the first book that I ended up reading in December was The Fastest Way to Fall by Denise Williams. I read Denise Williams, I believe it was her debut book, How to Fail at Flirting, earlier this year, and I ended up giving that one 4 stars. So when I saw that she had another one coming out this year, I decided to go ahead and put it on hold so I could listen to it on audio. I ended up giving this one 3.5 stars. It did not resonate with me as much as the first book did. It focuses on two characters, Britta and Wes. Britta is a lifestyle columnist and she is writing a piece about the use of weight loss apps, and her and a person that she works with, they're both going to, it's kind of like a miniature competition for them in order to get a permanent spot with this organization, and they decide to go with opposing companies and to write detailed experiences that they have with these companies. So Britta actually ends up using Wes's company. So Wes is the founder, CEO of this weight loss company, and she gets paired with him, and then they end up taking their relationship a little bit further through the app and some other things that happen. And I thought it was just a really cute way for them to kind of meet. I like that this one did focus on body positivity. Britta is plus size and she is using this as a way to get healthy. She talks a lot about her struggle with her image, but not using this as a way to say that she doesn't feel confident in the way that she looks. So I like that aspect of the body positivity. This is a slow burn romance. It definitely is on the slower side. So if you're looking for something that's more fast paced, then this book is definitely not going to be for you. I think the reason why I only gave this one 3.5 stars is because I felt like there was something that wasn't really developed with Britta. I don't know how to necessarily explain it. I just felt like there was an element to her that just wasn't really clicking with me, and I could not put my finger on it. I like Wes's character development, especially his familial relationships that were explored in the book, but Britta just, it's almost like she needed just a little bit more oomph in order for me to connect with her as a character. There was a miscommunication trope, which, if you know anything about me and my romance reading, is that is my least favorite trope in any romance book. I don't do well with miscommunication because it's almost like it's so simple and so easy to solve the problem, and people just are too old to be having miscommunications the way that they have miscommunications in romance books. So that was another thing for me, and it's sometimes I think that I've come across a couple that have a miscommunication trope and it's done very, very well, but it's a rarity for me. So yeah, this one didn't hit as hard as the first one that I read, but it still was a solid book, and like I said, I ended up giving that one 3.5 stars. The next one that I have is Dead Voices by Catherine Arden. I can't really say much about this one because it is the second book in this middle grade series but it does bring us back into the world where we are meeting up with our three main characters, who are Ollie, Coco, and Brian, and we are meeting them as they are headed to this kind of ski resort with their parents. They're trying to get away and relax for winter break. We get a little bit of rehashing of what happens in the first book in the series, which the first book of the series is slipping my mind right now. I can see the cover, but I can't tell y'all the title, which is completely awful because I think I read it in November and talked about it in my November wrap up. But hey, listen, I'll give you another cover so you know the first book that I'm talking about. But this one does kind of rehash a little bit what happens in that first book. Like I said, I can't really tell you much about this because there's some character overflow from the first one, and if I tell you explicitly what happened, I will spoil the first book, and I didn't realize that was what's going to happen. But what I can tell you is that when they end up going to the ski resort, there's this really, really bad snowstorm, and that when they get there, they're the only people that are there outside of the people who own the ski resort, and it's really creepy. And it's great being able to kind of see some things from different perspectives. So we do get a little bit of Coco's perspective. I can't remember if we get Brian's perspective or not, but I know that we do get some of Coco's internal dialogue, which I think is pretty cool. And I think that Catherine Arden has a gift for writing very creepy and atmospheric middle grade, which I think is a difficult balance to meet because you want to create a creepy and kind of skin crawly type of atmosphere, but in the same respect, you have to be mindful of the audience that you're writing for. You don't want to go above and beyond, and I think that Catherine Arden definitely has found that balance in the series. And maybe I'm just kind of like a baby because this one definitely creeped me out, but I think the villain of the series is just a creepy character. Like, they're just super creepy, and Catherine Arden just does a really, really great book tackling like her character development and intertwining that with the plot. It's just, they're just really good. I ended up giving it 4 stars. The next book that I ended up reading is You'll Be the Death of Me by Karen McManus. I was so disappointed by this book. I was so disappointed. This was the second Karen McManus book that I read. I talk about this a little bit in my most disappointing books of 2021, and I just have these high expectations for Karen McManus because I've read everything that she's written, and for the most part, I think that everything has been like a solid 3.5 to 4 star read for me. I think one was even 5 stars one year, but the 2 that I read this year just were not, they were not good at all. So You'll Be the Death of Me is the one that she released in December. I literally purchased the audiobook from the library, waited to see if anybody was going to put it on hold. Nobody put it on hold, so then I put it on hold, got it, listened to it in like 48 hours and returned it so someone else could check it out. I was super disappointed because it's a story that focuses on these 3 teens, and they used to be super close with each other, and what ends up happening is that they end up trying to relive a moment that they had when they were younger. So they decide to skip school and kind of get back into the groove of what had happened in the past. And while this happens, someone does end up dying. Someone gets murdered, and one of them ends up being a suspect. So then they're left to put the pieces of the puzzle together, and each one of them has secrets or they're struggling with something. That's one thing that I think Karen McManus does well, is that she's able to capture the essence of a teenager and certain things that teens struggle with, or things that we all have struggled with being teenagers. She's able to capture that very well. But the issue with this book is the plot was wild. I mean, you really had to suspend all belief to really buy into what she did with the plot of this one. By the time you make it to the end and you get to that conclusion of like the big reveal, it was like, this shit is crazy. Like, there's no way. It just didn't work well. The execution didn't work well. It was super far-fetched, and I really didn't like it. And then on top of that, this book read more like a contemporary than a mystery or a thriller, and I think that's why it didn't sit well with me. And it took me kind of thinking about it and kind of reading other people's reviews to see if they picked up on it as well. And there was one specific reviewer who had picked up on it and said, like, this book definitely does read more contemporary than it does mystery thriller, because the mystery thriller aspect of it really does take a back seat to the issues that have happened between the 3 friends. So in the context of the book, we also get a lot of flashbacks to why their relationship did not work. There's a lot of explaining and breaking down of what happened between the 3 of them that by the point that we meet them in the beginning of the novel, they're not really even friends anymore. So while that's interesting, I think because she has branded herself, or her agents or editors or the publishing company that she's with, that they have branded her as a mystery and thriller writer, you go into her books expecting those elements. So when you go into it and you're like, this is definitely more contemporary than mystery, you get thrown for a loop, and it just doesn't work well. So I ended up giving this one 3 stars. I don't know if she has one coming out this year, but I'm hesitant now. She's one of the few authors that I've literally kept up with in terms of like, as soon as she puts them out, I'm reading it. I'm eating them up. But now I'm kind of like, I don't want to keep doing this, and I keep getting disappointed. So we'll see if she's putting one out, and if I do end up reading it sometime this year. So the next one that I picked up or read was from Libro FM. I'm part of their librarian ALC program, and this is a title that I think I had selected a while ago, but I just never got to it. And I don't know what made me just look through my list one day. I was like, oh, I'm just gonna read this one. Like, literally, that's how it went. I don't think I knew anything about the book when I selected it, or anything about the book before I started listening to it. So the book itself is The Everything I Have Lost by Sylvia Zeleny, and this is a translated work. This is not the author's middle grade debut, but this is their middle grade debut in English, and it is about a young girl by the name of Julia who lives in Juarez, Mexico. And at the start of the novel, she's 12 years old, and it goes all the way until the time that she turns 15, and it's written in journal entries, and it basically is kind of like a coming of age story. So we, see her with like friendships, what it's like with her going to school, but in romantic relationships. But there's also like some really, really dark elements and trauma that's really tied into this one, and I was very shocked about how dark it gets. We, look at the relationship that she has with people in the neighborhood, like the violence that's in her neighborhood. There's border issues that are discussed because she's there, and then there's times when she is in El Paso, and there is clearly something going on with her dad. He does this really, really shady work where he doesn't come home for days at a time, or when he comes home he is beaten up, and her mother goes through bouts of depression where she won't get out of bed, she won't take care of the kids, so then they have to go stay with their great-grandmother. It's a lot. It is a lot, and when I was listening to it, I was like, whoa, this is not what I anticipated reading this book at all. But my goodness, and it ended up being like a pretty tough read. But it was interesting seeing her grow up and kind of mature from 12 to 15, and it's not one of those books that has like a happy, go lucky ending. But I was just like, wow, this was a hard-hitting middle grade book, which I think actually it would work very well for like upper middle grade to high school. I think high schoolers could read this and definitely relate to it, even though she's 12 at the start of the book. I mean, by the time you finished, it's definitely a high school class could pick that book up. But I did, and I don't even say enjoy. Enjoy is kind of like a tough word to use in this. I think because of the author's background and the experience that she's writing from, this was a unique read for me, and I appreciated what the author was doing, and I'm glad that I did end up picking it up, and I ended up giving it 4 out of 5 stars. Okay, so after that, I actually went through kind of like a rereading phase. I ended up rereading Loveboat Taipei by Abigail Hengwen, and I gave this 4 stars. It's been 4 stars. I read it twice last year. So I read it physically last year, and then I listened to it on audio at the end of the year, and I decided to listen to it on audio again because the next book in the series is coming out on the 25th of this month, and I do have an art copy of it, so I will be reading that. But I wanted to make sure that I remembered everything correctly, which, I mean, I read it 2 times last year, and when I read it this year, I was like, I know everything that's about to happen. So it is an indulgence for me, honestly. I know that a lot of people did not enjoy Loveboat Taipei. I think that there are some really shady things that do happen, especially with the main character. Her name is Ever. Her close friend that she ends up making when she's in Taipei does something really shady. I was about to say shitty, but it's both shitty and shady, and it's almost like she's forgiven too quickly. And I think that she got a redemption arc a little too easily, considering the amount of damage that she did to Ever and her reputation, which I did not like, and I wish that that was addressed a little bit more, which is why I just can't give it 5 stars. And it's childish. Like, there's a lot of ways it's childish, it's petty drama, but I ate it up and I enjoyed it. This is one of those reads where it's like, it's not the best thing that's been written, but on an enjoyment level, it's great. I love the drama. Just enjoyed the drama. And I know a lot of people don't like Ever as a character, but it's just a series that I've clearly enjoyed it, because I've read the first book 3 times. I don't know how many times I'm gonna read the second one, but clearly I am, and the second one, it may not be as good for me, because the second one I think is going to focus on this friend that was kind of not redeemable for me in the first book. So I may not have as high opinions with the second book, but the first book always has been 4 stars for me. The next book that I ended up reading is also another reread, and that's The Afterlife of Holly Chase by Cynthia Han. I didn't really read any holiday books in the month of December, which is a change from last year where I read a lot of holiday books. I'm talking as if we're still in 2021. In 2020, I read a lot of holiday books in December. 2021, not so much. Like I said, it just, life, happened. But I did want to read at least one, and I had not read The Afterlife of Holly Chase, I think, since maybe 2018. It's been a few years since I read it, and it is essentially a retelling of A Christmas Carol, except our main character is supposed to go through the phases of, like the ghost of Christmas present, past, future, whatever, and redeem herself. And in this case, in this retelling of it, she does not redeem herself, and she ends up having to work for this company where she works with other Scrooges who they're trying to rehabilitate, and they may or may not be rehabilitated. So all the people that work for this company at some point, or at least most of the people who work for this company at some point, have been a Scrooge, and they failed, seeing what their problems were. I think this was just really, really great, seeing the main character kind of grow and really understand why she was shown the things that she was shown, and why she behaved the way she behaved, and what really triggered the issues that she had when she was on Earth before she was working for this company, and how lonely it's been for her in working for this company, because she goes through her whole A Christmas Carol routine, and by the time you really start the novel, she's already been working for the company for I think about 5 years. So you get to see like how it's emotionally impacted her, and I love to see a good growth arc for a character, and this definitely happens in this book with a slight hint of romance, and it was good. It was nothing too complex about it, to be honest with you. Really literally just a Christmas Carol retelling, but it was a good one, and I rated it 5 stars when I read it the first time, and I kept it at 5 stars when I read it this year. The next one that I read was slightly disappointing, and I don't know how people are going to feel about it, because this was an arc read for me. This book doesn't come out until February of this year, and I read You Truly Assumed by Layla Sabrine. I ended up giving this one 3.5 stars. As you can see, the cover is absolutely beautiful. It is one that I was definitely looking forward to. It is a book that features 3 Black Muslim girls who are dealing with the aftermath of a terrorist attack that happens in Washington, D.C. And the person who commits the act of terror, his last name is assumed to be indicative of him being Muslim. And so they're dealing with the fallout of what happens to Muslim communities when stuff like this happens, and specifically how it impacts, Black Muslims, because that's a whole different level of intersectionality, and then being a Black Muslim woman is just compounded. It's a lot of different levels of social categorizations that happen in there. So the thing that I did like about this book is that it's told in 3 perspectives. So for each one of these young women, we do get their perspective and things that they're dealing with in their respective hometowns. They unite together and they create this blog called You Truly Assumed, which is supposed to be a safe space for kids their age that identify as Muslim to really have a community and to help each other kind of work through different issues. I felt like the novel itself is pretty slow. I think that while I enjoyed getting the various background stories of each one of the characters, the drama, or I won't even say the drama, the conflict that ensues is forced. It's almost like it tried to cover too much at one time and it was forced, and then the resolutions were too easy, and it just felt like too many different books. By the time we get to the end, it started to lose its cohesiveness, which I really didn't like, because I felt like it was doing good, and then all of a sudden it started to feel really disjointed at the end, and the writing also wasn't as strong by the time we got to the end of the book, almost as if the book should have been shorter. That way we were getting a more clean and concise narrative. I can't speak to the Muslim representation because I am not Muslim. From what I have seen from reviewers, they do appreciate the Muslim representation, especially the fact that they're 3 young Black Muslim women. But when I think about my criticisms, it is definitely in terms of the actual structure of the book and not the representation. It just did not work well for me in terms of plot development, character development, and pacing. It didn't flow as well as it could have, worked if I think some parts of the book would have been reworked. So it was a slight disappointment. It wasn't that it was a bad book, but I think I just had higher expectations for it. Although I think a lot of people are going to gravitate towards the book because of the representation, but it was a lot of elements from it that didn't work well. So like I said, I gave this one 3.5 stars. After that, I did my annual reread of Birthday Girl. So the first time that I read Birthday Girl by Penelope Douglas was in 2019. I remember because it was shortly after I had the baby, and then I reread it last year, and I reread it 2019. I reread it 2020. I keep forgetting that we're in 2022. So let me start that over. I read it for the first time in 2019, fall of 2019. I reread it fall of 2021 or 2020, and I reread it again in fall of 2021, and I probably will reread it fall of 2022. It's like my thing, whereas my annual read of Birthday Girl. So I've officially read this book 3 times now, and I love it. It's one of those things where I think that people either love or hate Birthday Girl. It's not everybody's cup of tea. It is an age gap romance, and it's kind of a taboo element with the heroine falling in love with her boyfriend's father. But it works. I think it works. I think that Penelope Douglas did a good, job of making that whole situation work. But they end up, the heroine and her boyfriend end up having to move in with the hero because of some financial issues, and the heroine's boyfriend is trash. And of course there's this undeniable chemistry between the hero and the heroine, but they don't act on it. 1, because she's dating his son, and then 2, there's this age gap. She's 18 but he's in his 30s, and but they just work so well together, and it is a slow burn. It is a slow burn romance, and I didn't realize how much I like slow burn romance until I read Birthday Girl. So with that being said, if you have any slow burn romance recs, let me know in the comments below. But it is slow burn. It's slow burn. It was slow burn enough for me to the point when I first read it, I was like, just do it. Just do it. Like, get together. Just do it. You want to do it. We all want you to do it. So it's fun rereading it, now year after year, realizing like I know how the story's going to end. I know how the chemistry builds, and I know how they get together, why they get together, the issues that they have, how they work them out, and like the conclusion of everything. So it was just a fun, easygoing reread for me. It was sexy. It was just enticing. I just love this book. This is a 5-star read for many people who hate Birthday Girl, but I love Birthday Girl. I have not read anything else by Penelope Douglas, and I probably will try some other stuff by her, but that is kind of like home for me, is definitely Birthday Girl. And the last book that I read for the month was The Point of It All by Christina C. Jones. This is, I believe it's Sugar Valley. I'll say Sweet Valley High. It's Sugar Valley book number 2. I read a lot of Christina C. Jones books in 2021, like a lot. And in 2022, I'm going to read more Christina C. Jones books because I really want to get through this woman's backlist. I feel like it's never going to happen because she writes so quickly and she writes so much, and it's like daggone near impossible to read everything, but I'm going to try my hardest to read through her stuff in 2022. But I wanted to get to this one because I had read the first book in the Sugar Valley series earlier this year, or earlier in 2021, and I was like, I just wanted to go ahead and finish out the duology. And so I did pick that one up, and I actually ended up connecting with this one more than the first one. And this one focuses on our hero and a heroine who meet because the heroine has bought a vineyard, and it originally belonged to the hero's family, and he goes initially trying to convince her to give the vineyard back to him, but he realizes that she just has good intentions with it, so he leaves it alone. I think the most difficult part of this is that our heroine definitely has some secrets that she's keeping, and when the secrets were revealed, I was very shocked because it was not what I was expecting at all. And Christina C. Jones knows how to write characters, plot lines, stories, whatever, that really tug on your heart, and this one definitely had such a strong emotional element to it, and it was hard to read in some sections, I think, because you just felt for both the hero and the heroine. And even though I think everything does work out really great, there's an HEA for this book, the journey to get to the HEA was tough, but I always say that I think that Christina C. Jones is just brilliant at her craft. She's a beautiful writer. She's just a gifted writer. She just does amazing things, and it seems like her writing just has no limits, and she's doing things that some of these traditional published books wish they could do. And no shade, but she just is just amazing. She's just amazing. So that's how I finished with my books for the year. That's the book that I finished with. All right, I did read a couple picture books and some comics to finish out 2021 as well. I did end up reading Saga volumes 5 and 6. Can't really tell you anything about those because of the fact that it's volume 5 and 6 and we're in the middle of the series. We did have a live show for volumes 5 and 6. I'll make sure I link that live show up in the card symbol above. I still don't know if we finalize our live show date for volumes 7 and 8, and then we're doing a separate live show for volume 9. But whenever that stuff is figured out, I will make sure that everything's uploaded onto my channel, like the dates and stuff, and we make an announcement. I also read the picture book Treasure Box, and this is by Dave Keane. I read this as an art, and it is about a little girl who spends time with her grandfather, and her grandfather and her go out and they pick up random items, and she puts them in her treasure box, and then her grandfather starts getting ill, and she starts to contemplate whether she's ever going to be able to pick out things for her treasure box again. This is one of those books that handles grief or bereavement very well, and if parents or caregivers are looking for ways to support conversations about grief, this is one that would work very well, and one that I really did enjoy. I love that the colors were kind of muted. They weren't super bright. It was a nice range in terms of palette, but they were muted colors, but it just worked very well for the context of the story, and it was very heartwarming, and definitely one that I would love to see in a lot of libraries as a part of their collections. After that, I ended up reading Squad by Maggie Takuda Hall, and I gave this one 3 stars. This was one that I picked up on a whim because I had seen the cover a lot, and it is a sapphic werewolf horror graphic novel, which is, that's a heck of a label to give it, but it is a sapphic werewolf horror graphic novel. It is about these group of girls who clearly have some abilities. It's marketed as Pretty Little Liars meets Teen Wolf, but I would almost say that it felt more like Mean Girls meets The Craft. That's how it felt to me. I think that is really how it should be marketed, but these girls, of course, have some abilities, try not to spoil too much of it, but they target men or teenage boys who are more inclined to possibly sexually assault women, and there's some stuff that they do. But of course, when you start making judgments about people's characters in any type of story like this, somebody or something gets out of control, and at some point people are going to notice that these people are missing, so they have to navigate that. I think that I struggled with this because of the characters. They were not great at all. There were some microaggressions that were kind of thrown at the black girl that I didn't like. It wasn't sitting too right with me. So yeah, but I mean, the artwork was really nice. I think it definitely had like this 90s punk type of art form to it, but overall, like, I really struggled with rating this one because it was like gonna be a 2 or a 3-star read because of the character development, but I ended up settling for 3 stars. I also did end up reading Bitterroot volumes 1 through 3. If you did not know, I do have a comic book club that I'm hosting this year once a month on my channel with Bree from the Locked Booktition. This month we're going to be discussing Persepolis probably towards the end of the month, but last month we discussed Bitterroot volumes 1 through 3 and 5 stars, all 3 volumes. Bitterroot volume 1 was a reread for me. I have not read volume 2 and 3, but it was so good, y'all. So good. And I'm gonna leave the live show discussion up at the card symbol above so you can kind of get a feel of what we talked about. I don't really even know how to explain Bitterroot to you without like spoiling it, but it is a book that takes place at, you know, 1920s ish, and it's focused on this family that fights these creatures that exist because of racism. But it's a lot more complex. There's a lot more complicated themes to it. It was just so daggone good. Sanford Green does the artwork, so I'm not surprised that it was absolutely amazing. But yeah, if you haven't read Bitterroot, definitely check out all 3 volumes of Bitterroot. And the last thing that I have to talk about is Mermaid Kenzie by Charlotte Watson Sherman. This is another picture book that I read as an advanced copy, and it's about a little black girl who loves going to the beach and loves dressing up and pretending that she's a mermaid. And one day her and her mom go to the beach, and she realizes that the beach is completely just contaminated with a lot of trash and that it's harming the marine life, so she makes a plan to help clean up the beach. I think that this is just really cute. I mean, any little black girl as a mermaid, you know that I'm gonna love, so there's that. And then I think that it opens up a good conversation for little ones and caregivers to talk about human impact on marine life. Like, it was really just an enjoyable read, and I love that it was just about her being happy about being a mermaid, but realizing, like, you know, I want to help the marine life at the same time as well. So I love that one, and I ended up giving it 4 stars. All right, y'all, so that's all the stuff that I ended up reading in the month of December. Probably a little bit shorter of a wrap up than what you're used to because of the fact that I did not read as much as I typically read in a month, but that's okay. I read some really good stuff, some disappointing stuff. Let me know in the comment box below what you ended up reading in the month of December. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more content from me, click the subscribe button, hit that bell for notifications, and I'll be back with another video soon.